We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I am here today with Sergio. Help me out, Sergio. Altomare. See, I knew it. I knew it was going to have a stretched R in there, but I didn't go with that. So anyway, Sergio is here today with, Hearthfire Holdings. I'm sorry, Sergio. I got so messed up on making sure I got that last name right that it just screwed my whole mind, my whole mindset up. So welcome today, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Casey.
Absolutely, Sergio. We are so glad you're here, and we're so glad to learn about you and your business and what you've got going on. And we always try to connect our listeners with a little bit of story. So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from, and how you kind of got rolling along in the real estate business.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. So, my story is an interesting one, as most are. I'm 46 now. My journey in real estate really started in 2007. I'm Philadelphia born and raised, grew up in the city, went to the public school systems there. I landed a job at the Federal Reserve, got into IT. So I was in tech for 22 years. Started when I was 18. So I've been around a little while. So 2007, I started to look at, how to diversify and, essentially at that time was looking to move out of the house. So I bought a duplex from a buddy of mine. It wasn't zoned as a duplex, long, hard lesson there. So bought a property. Property. It was 2007. So you know what happened next. So I bought the property. I spent nights, weekends, renovating the unit. I was going to live in one unit, rent out the other unit. That project didn't go all that well, but you know what? That was an education that I got from that. Met my now wife, Corinn, in 2012. She also was working at the Fed. She was looking to just buy a property, shield her day job income, looking at multifamily. She bought a multifamily property while we were just dating, spent those nights and weekends renovating the unit that she was going to live in. Fast forward a couple years, bought a few more properties, then, started to run out of capital for buying properties that we had access to, right? I mean, I was in tech, so I could figure out, I was always good at math, no Excel, no technology. So I was doing my own underwriting. We started doing our own property management with our properties. So got introduced to the concept of syndication from my father-in-law, dove into some books, dove into Bigger Pockets, learned the space. I mean, some of those books are behind me. And from there, we started with just small properties, small multifamilies. Our first syndication deal was 3 other investors, and it was a duplex. And, we didn't have a name. We didn't, we were trying to figure it out and got that growing, syndicated a handful of other properties over the next few years. Fast forward to 2016, my wife quit her day job. 2017, I quit my day job. Our property management business was taken off. We started managing other people's properties even before that. My beautiful little girl, Stella, was born in 2017, which, anybody who has kids knows that changes your world in so many ways, including priorities and purpose. And,
absolutely,
we from my days at the Fed, I know economic cycles. I know how the economy works. I know what to look for. And 2017, 2018, we knew that there was a market shift recession coming, which should have happened around that time. But the Fed wouldn't let it happen. They still won't let it happen. But anyway, long story
Sure.
short is, we decided to pivot to self-storage, and we pivoted to self-storage, bought our first property in 2019, and we're actually looking to exit that first property. Huge gains. And, now where we're sitting, we got over $50 million in assets under management, 12 facilities
Sweet.
across 3 states. Got a rock star team, and just really taking properties down and running it like a true private equity firm.
Man, that's awesome. I mean, that's there's a lot of elements there and a lot of your backstory kind of matches mine. Our hair story is pretty close to the same. And so we those little girl, I was going to say the little girls will make you lose it, but obviously, I'm post little girl. Your little girls are still your little girl is still at the age where I'm sure she's sweet and loves dad, and mine are not. But having a daughter really changes a lot of perspective. It's one of those things that I don't care. You could read 1,000 books a day for every day leading up to the day your first daughter is born, and absolutely take everything you learned in those 1,000 books a day and throw it away, because none of it is ever going to match how that changes you and how that formulates your priorities. I had a son too, don't get me wrong, and that was just as amazing as the girls being when it's being born, but those little girls have a way of changing everything. Yep. So anyway, congratulations. I know you said she's 5 now. Yep. And so she doesn't know everything yet, but it is coming.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, she's pretty sharp now. She already tells us a lot of what she does know. So it's awesome. I like to say that I learned just as much from her as I could possibly teach her.
You dang right. And then they teach you a lot of things, a lot of life lessons too. So
absolutely.
Things that capital raising won't teach us. So anyhow, but sorry. So let's dive in a little bit on the self-storage and what where your assets at now. You said across several states. And then are you all doing like unmanned facilities or manned facilities? What does that look like?
So our properties are in Pennsylvania, Indiana, and Illinois, and they're, I would say, quasi-manned, meaning that we're all about economies of scale. With my tech background, I learned pretty early on that self-storage takes utilizing technology. You can scale, and you can scale properties utilizing the same back-end platform. That's one of the areas that makes self-storage unique. And so we have same back-end operation, now property management company. We just had a press release. We just formed a strategic partnership with Atomic Storage to be our third-party manager. We were managing our own properties in Pennsylvania. They were doing ours in Indiana. We turned over the reins to all the properties. So from there, it's really just a matter of having single manager that can span multiple facilities. All of our facilities are 30,000 or greater net rentable square feet. Self-storage, like anything else, is more lucrative at scale. We're looking to even now go bigger. A lot of our facilities have expansion components to them. So we're value add investors. So our value add plans are to grow and expand these facilities. So between our 12 facilities, if I'm not mistaken, we have 3 employees that actually are boots on the ground. Everything else happens from central location, from an operations management. We're obviously doing the asset management on our side and just checking on the property management piece, and really just managing it like a true business. And it's all about revenue management. It's all about maximizing occupancy, not to say maximum as in 100% occupancy, but optimizing occupancy as it relates to highest percentage occupancy relative to revenue. So we run our facilities very similar to the way the REITs do. Obviously, we're smaller, more nimble, target generating a lot higher returns than a lot of other outfits that operate much larger.
Yeah. Now, so that takes me to a couple of different questions here. Um, the first question that I have, at least I know from my experience in the residential world. Now, part of our fund of funds is investing in self storage, or well, we invest with an operator that is purely an operator of self storage. Let me say that. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, one thing that I've always been curious about self storage is deal flow. Like, where and how, like, is this purely based on like broker
Mhm.
relationships? Is this based on, because I know there's also some self storage masterminds out there, and I just got to think that there's probably a lot less mom and pop owners in the self storage business than there are in, like, say, the multifamily business. So how does the deal flow happen, and how did you get that started?
So interesting. When I started well, I shouldn't say when I started. So it's actually there are a lot more mom and pop owners in self storage than any other asset class. So if you think about,
Really?
yeah, it's about 70. Last I saw, it's about 70% of facilities are owned by mom and pop operators. So it's there.
Now, what's the square footage, like, what of that 70%, how many of them are like, and again, you measure it on, I know, the rentable square footage, but if you had 100%, what would the bottom 1% square footage be? Would that, because I gotta assume we're not talking about places that have like 10 or 12 units, because I know there's a bunch of those
Yeah,
scattered
yeah, yeah,
everywhere.
yeah. No, that's valid. I mean, obviously, the REITs are looking at facilities that are 60,000 or greater. So, like anything else, it's going to be concentrated. The net rentable concentration is going to be in the larger operators, so it will shift down. I mean, you're talking about number of facilities versus net rentable square footage. I don't know what the exact numbers are there, but it is. You're not, in terms of relationships and how we're sourcing deals, we have a multi-pronged approach, right? And the multi-pronged approach is we do have a relationship with brokers, right? Brokers
Okay.
they want to deal with buyers that are going to close. They want to obviously establish relationships with sellers that are going to want to sell at some point. So we've got some really strong relationships. Now that obviously didn't grow overnight. We've had to be established. It
Sure.
started with just being really aggressive on our first deal, proving that we can close. And now it's even gotten to the point where brokers and owners look for referrals from other brokers to make sure that you're a legitimate buyer. Where
Yeah.
we're buying right now, which is essentially east of the Mississippi, we know the top five offices in terms of brokerage, so we have a pretty good reputation from that standpoint. Other areas that we source deals is off market, and it's not a big flow of our deals right now, but it is growing, and that can be just from self storage owner that heard me or one of our team members on a podcast. In one case, we actually have a tenant of ours that has a larger unit in one of our properties that has another facility, a smaller facility, but it has some potential for expansion that we're in talks to acquire that. Otherwise, we are taking an approach to reach out to owners directly, and then the other area that we're penetrating is development. When you're a player and you're established and growing, a lot of deals will find you. So we're fielding a lot of calls, a lot of people that are either have access to deals or interested in the space. So we do some JV. We are evaluating JV opportunities, ground up development. We're really making headway in that space. If we talk in a year from now, there's a good chance that that's going to be where our primary focus is. Because if you look at where the margins are, we're talking about replacement cost versus what you're paying from a broker. Market's changing right now as
Sure.
we
Sure.
slowly head into a recession and that kind of thing. So we try and hit it from every
It's got to
angle.
be kind of it's got to be kind of balancing itself for you,
Yeah.
your cost of replacement, and then because the cost of building those things. And actually, I'll tell you, as of recording right now, and when this airs in a month or 6 weeks, as of right now, there is a huge concrete shortage,
Mhm.
and the concrete shortage is being fueled by now, at least east of the Mississippi, there is now. Everywhere else, I don't know that I could really speak for that, but they're having a hard time getting the cement, which the cement, I guess, is the active. It is the active ingredient in concrete, which makes it harden. And
Yeah.
anyway, that's a different story. But the new development for self storage has really kind of slowed down to a creep because the concrete is like, that's what is that? I mean, that's like a third of your main element, concrete and metal. I mean,
Yep.
there's your elements, right?
Yep.
And so I know that's at least slowed the development of additional self storage in our area anyway. One thing that I had brought an approach up to a guy one time about self storage and where it's headed, and I want to get your opinion on this. Back during COVID, we had the what were they, the stimulus payments. The stimulus payments that went out, you had to make a certain amount of money or under a certain amount of money. You got $1,200, whatever it was, at times however many, and then your kids got so much and whatever. And it seems to me that people used that money to go buy stuff. And they had to then take that new stuff and put it where they live. And for some reason, the American way is to never, ever, under any circumstances, get rid of your stuff. So then it essentially becomes Sergio getting we're taxing for all intents and purposes these people to keep their stuff. Like, we're storing Barbie doll, like, for instance, and I'm as guilty, my family is as guilty of it as anybody. We've got a storage building right now that we're paying $75. And I tell my wife every month when it comes out, I'm like, we're paying $75 a month to store literally like $500 worth of goods.
Yep.
$500 worth of goods. It's sitting there.
Yep.
And it's like once people put that stuff in there, it's like they're there, and it's much easier just to pay that $75 than it is to actually stop, take the time, go hook up to a trailer and go out there and empty the thing out and bring it, do something with it.
Well, that's what we call that the sticky factor, right? I mean, the average tenancy for somebody who rents a unit, even if they say, hey, I only need it for a month or so, that's just the way it works, because it's like you said, who's going to take their weekend and say, I'm going to go empty this stuff, right? You put it in there because you think, hey, I'm going to keep this. This has got this value, sentimental value, or whatever. And it's about, we are a consumption-based economy. We are based on stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a reason why we say self-storage is recession resistant. It works in good times and in bad times. In good times, people buy more stuff. In bad times, they got to downsize. So it works, and we're providing a service. And like you're similar to like your Netflix subscription and all these apps and stuff. It's a blip on your credit card, and so you're not going to do the math. I mean, we've got tenants at some of our facilities that have a storage unit for 10 years, and in some case, multiple units, and they're just full of junk, and they just have a hard time getting rid of it. And so that's like I said, we provide a service, so it's great.
Now, what is your thoughts, and maybe you can give us some numbers to back up whatever your answer is to this question, on climate controlled versus exposed?
So there's, climate controlled or better temperature controlled, depending on the market. So climate control really refers to heating, air conditioning, and humidity, right? Versus temperature controlled is just, hot or cold. And
well, where we're at here in Kentucky, you have to have climate control.
Right.
I mean, because if not, if you had 80% humidity outside, you'd have 40 inside in the coolest of temperatures, and you're still So all right, go ahead.
So it's really going to be. I
just didn't realize there was a difference. Let me back up. I didn't realize there was a difference.
Yeah. So there is, and in some cases they call it temperature. They call it climate control when it's really temperature control. Now, if you really do need to control humidity, then those markets I would expect that. Now, again, it really does come down to market. I mean, in any given market, Florida versus, say in Pennsylvania, the demand is going to be different in any given market. We use a lot of data and analysis and competition analysis to determine what is the demand for climate temperature controlled versus just straight drive up. And if you're in an indoor building where you got to build it up, that is going to be, you're going to need to have climate control or temperature control, because you're not going in this building and, sweating your ass off when you're trying to move stuff in or out. So if it's drive up, if it's a drive up unit, I mean, sometimes it's like, who cares? But it also depends on, who's storing what. If it's a lower income market that is predominantly like, blue collar, you may need less of it. But it really, in any given 3 and 5 mile radius, is really going to determine whether the demand is going to be on straight drive up versus climate control. Other factors include, what is the population density? If it's a more rural area, it's going to be one way, urban another.
Sure. And I'm assuming the profitability of one versus the other is about the same. Just because obviously your climate control or your temperature control units are generally higher than on a per month basis than the drive up or than the
it's about the price premium is about 35% higher for climate controlled. So you want more of those, and then obviously the higher or the smaller the unit, the higher the rent per square footage.
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cashflow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cashflow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show.
So if you get high demand for smaller units that are also climate controlled, then you're going to have an overall much higher rent rate across your property.
Sure. Now, the ones that are multiple levels, obviously you said those are most of the time, at least what I've seen, almost always climate controlled or temperature controlled. Is there a difference in profitability of that versus one that you just pull up to and unload?
Well, in terms of profitability, they're usually going to be in different markets. Maybe not, right? So if you got a multi-story property, generally speaking, that's going to be in a more population dense. So when you're looking at a footprint of a property, if you're building up, chances are there's less available land in the area, higher population density. You're going to have a higher throughput in terms of tenants. If you got more land and you got drive up, then you're generally speaking, you're going to find more of that in secondary, tertiary markets, where you're going to see closer to primary markets, the multi-story. So generally speaking, when you're looking at the density of a building, you're going to get higher margins on the multi-story properties. However, overall cost expense ratios, because you're talking about multi-stories, building it's going to be, cost you more. You're talking about sprinkler systems, HVAC, the utilities, and all that. So
to go up, right?
Yeah. So the economics of a drive up is going to be smaller. So I would probably say that your multi-story property is going to require a higher maintenance factor, require an on-site manager type of thing, whereas your drive up self-storage and just the secondary market is not.
Cool. Good deal, man. That's good information. And, especially because it is such a hot asset class right now. I mean, it just seems like everybody, and it's while on the surface it seems so easy to figure, especially if you have an existing complex that's right there where you can be like, okay, this thing brings in X amount of dollars average, so on, so on, so on. But where the challenge I think lies, and of course, the old real estate adage is location, location, location. Um, I've even gone as far as seeing like we were talking about the mom and pop self storage places, but like in the middle of nowhere, like especially in Kentucky, where rural Kentucky where we live. I mean, you might just be driving on the road, and you might look over and there's 25 units lined up over there, where and it's just like, really, there's like they just put them in the randomest places. But I'm assuming on a from an underwriting perspective, are you able to quantify any of that, like based on certain economic
Yeah,
factors?
it's actually I don't want to say easy, but it's a lot more anchored in data than even in some cases when we're talking about multifamily, right? And multifamily, a lot of it,
Mhm.
if you're talking about rent, you're talking about comps, right? When we're talking about
Sure.
supply and demand in self storage, it's based on population, right? So the national average for equilibrium between supply and demand is about 7 square foot per capita, right? So what we're talking about
Yeah.
is 7 square foot for every 1,000 people in population. And so when we're looking at any given market, and we're looking at generally a 1, 3, and 5 mile radius, depending on how big a market is in terms of population, you might go out to 10 miles or it might just be 3 miles. So you can use like a tool like Radius Plus. I mean, there's a number of tools out there that give you the total population and the total square footage of net rentable square footage of self storage in any given area. And then from there, you have to do the due diligence to determine, is there anything new in the pipeline? What are the population trends going up, down, sideways, whatever the case may be? So if it's less than 7 square foot per capita, you know that there's going to be more demand than there is supply. If it's over, then generally it's the other way around. Now, in some cases, there's a it depends piece of that too, right? There are markets where the supply is at 22 square feet per capita, and there's plenty of demand there. So that's going to vary. So there's general rules of thumb, and then from there you got to dig within the numbers. I mean, we go as far as looking at diversity of employers, population trends, median income, and we evaluate a lot of factors to determine if we're going to go in or buy into a market. And we'll even go to the municipality, look at permits of any new facilities, look at even the zoning and potential for new facilities in any given market. But the overall way that you look at supply and demand is fairly straightforward.
Sure, sure. Yeah. And that's just where I guess the different type of underwriting. And that's why expanding into a different asset class isn't for everybody, which kind of brings us back to why I said, hey, if I'm going to have self storage be a portion of any of my investors' interest, I'm going to have somebody that specializes in that be laid out there. And I think that's definitely everything you said is just really spot on. And I can't. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a totally different asset class, but and these syndications and these one-off syndications have made it where, because used to the bigger facilities were all REIT owned, like they were all institutional stuff. There was mom and pop, but I'm literally talking about like 40, 50, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 rentable square feet was pretty much had to be pretty much REIT driven,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, well, I mean, REITs have predominantly been in major metros, right? And now the returns aren't there. I mean, COVID kind of shifted the landscape in a lot of different ways. With a lot of people now being able to work remotely, moving out to the suburbs, and now what we're seeing is in secondary, even in some cases, some tertiary markets, you're seeing some of those major REITs move in and acquire facilities in there just because the margins, the return potential's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, listen, a couple of questions we ask every guest that comes on the show. And the first question is, what is the best book that you have either recently read or are currently reading?
So,
I see a whole shelf back there full of
yeah,
them. So I
I
know you.
my approach is always starting with mindset, and I'm big on meditation, and it's to me it's like it's the equivalent of uh, reading a book on real estate and then using your intuition when you're touring a property on whether you should buy it. So you need to incorporate both things. So I'm very much into I'm a self improvement junkie, and for me, some transformational books are the same as every Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich. I mean, those types of things. Think and Grow Rich is probably one that kind of combines that whole spiritual element and intuition. Right now, I'm reading Good to Great. Some other books that were huge for me is Who
Yes.
Not How. That's traction,
That's
rocket
like the
flow.
eighth time in 2 weeks I've had that book on this show.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
get into be where I got the Bible at the top, then I get Rich Dad Poor Dad, and now I'm getting Who Not How. Like those are the three. Like
yeah,
you just
yeah. I'll
just
throw
all
another
the
one
time.
out there. I know you asked for one other book, but I'm trying to. I like to
No,
be a
yeah,
little different. Faster Than Normal was a book that was something that made a tremendous difference for me personally. Being a someone who has a mind that literally works faster than normal. Most entrepreneurs do, and what others might classify as a level of ADD and ADHD. That was transformative to me in understanding how my brain does operate at a much faster pace. So it's a matter of the way I look at it as creating a file cabinet for and organizing your mind, your thoughts, and your ability to organize your day, prioritize goals, and that kind of thing. And so that was huge for me. Resulted in a lot of things. Me working primarily on my health. Not drinking. Just really doubling down on me personally and my mind, which transcends into business, family, and everything else. So I'm a big believer in that. I do a lot of work with coaching. We have another company called Pivotal Coaching Collective, where that's one of the things that I teach. You're not going to work with me if you're not willing to work on your overall self and worth, and not just focus on money and deals and that kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. Cool deal, man. Well, that second question is, what is a dream vacation that you have either taken or hope to take?
So interesting enough, I'm going with a bunch of my Go Bros to Alaska in a couple weeks, fishing in Sitka, Alaska, and this was a bucket list trip for me, in just doing some king salmon fishing and that kind of thing. But my wife and I, we love to travel. Uh, we've done some phenomenal trips. We love the Caribbean. Uh, Saint Thomas, Curacao. So every one of them has been unique. We did a Viking River cruise in the Danube River. Saw a bunch of historical cities, town, countries, castles, that kind of thing. And then another one was a narrow boat. Spent a week on a narrow boat in the canals in the UK. That was pretty phenomenal, off the beaten path. So I like off the beaten path type
Shoot,
of
yeah,
trips. Another bucket
yeah.
list is an African safari. That's one of the trips that I like to do.
Yeah, one of mine is actually Madagascar,
Yeah,
and I was talking on on a show not long ago with a lady who said that that was one of hers too, and so yes, I'm anything like Central African that's obviously safe. I would be the bush would be where I could be found if I was in Africa for sure,
yeah,
out looking at it. Was it the big? They call it the big five. Is that right? The big
yeah,
or the big four, big five, big four,
yeah.
whatever it is. The cats. elephants, the drought, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, good deal. Well, Sergio, if the listeners have heard something that resonated with them and they would like to reach out to you and get in touch, possibly invest or even talk to you more about self-storage, what is a good way for that to happen?
Easiest gateway to me and my world is investwithsergio.com. That's got links to all of our companies, podcast, media, and direct access to me, and on LinkedIn.
Easy enough. Easy enough, brother. Well, Sergio, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. And listeners, run out, check out Sergio's website. He just gave it to you, and listen to his podcast. And as always, we ask that if you've enjoyed our content, if you've enjoyed this show with Sergio, please leave us a 5-star review and go check out Sergio's podcast and leave him a 5-star review too. Check it out, because I can guarantee you it's going to be full of, if you're into the self-storage space or want to be into the self-storage space, this is the guy right here. So thank you again for listening. And Sergio, thank you again for being on the show.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks, Casey.
Yes, sir.
Cashflow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.